Woodford Reserve distiller, and the founding Woodford Reserve master distiller, also the man behind a lot of the major Jack Daniel products, and the man who basically was experimenting with barrel finishes while at Brown-Forman. He decides to come out of retirement and start his own product called Angel's Envy, and they did port barrel finishes. Now, by doing port barrel finishes, they were calling themselves bourbon finished in a port barrel. And when they came out, they were the very first mainstay port finish or mainstay additional barrel finish. While there had been others, they had been one-offs or limited editions or part of experimental collections. The Angel's Envy brand is very historic in the fact that it was the first that kind of like showed the world that bourbon can be, people can be attracted to it for something other than how it has always been made cask-wise. There was just one problem with that. The people who basically said that, you know what, we shouldn't be, doing these barrel finishes because that's not really bourbon, that never really went away. And so the thing that Angel's Envy did that kind of changed the game a little bit, they never tried to hide anything. They were always transparent, never tried to hide a damn thing about it. And they would say bourbon finished in X cask. They would do it, anytime you'd ever ask him a question about how they did it, they were very transparent about it. And so I've always believed that if in 2010 to 2013, that if they would have changed or created a new type of bourbon, that it was like we could have like a single barrel finish like after it has dumped, I think that could have ended a lot of the controversy that we have today. But the reason why I say it's controversial is because barrel finishes now are classified by the federal government in the label approval program as distilled spirit specialties. That means when they go to apply for their federal label, they are not granted bourbon status. They are granted distilled spirit specialty. And that they have to file a formula and everything. Whereas in bourbon, they don't have to do that. Now, that's a lot of kind of like, I would say, that's being very picky and everything. But you have to remember that bourbon is a federally protected term. And it is so coveted and so important that when we are negotiating free trade agreements with other countries, they must actually adhere to our standards of what bourbon is. And at some point, now that we have a spiritless bourbon, at some point there is going to be a country that says, you all don't even respect your own laws of what bourbon is, so why can't we make a Chinese bourbon, a Mexican bourbon, a Canadian bourbon? And so when you hear me talk about this of like saying bourbon shouldn't be on the front of the label with the finishes, that is not because I dislike the products. I absolutely love these. I actually think that this right here, this is some of the most exciting stuff going on in American whiskey. But I think it leaves the bourbon category very vulnerable to, future, people trying to make bourbon in other countries. And I also think it leaves a lot of room for shenanigans for someone who wants to finish in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 barrels, and then every barrel like, oh, well, we got to dump a little bit of sherry in there. Yeah, with that sherry barrel. It leaves a lot of room of interpretation of what can be allowed in a finish. So that is just a little bit of a kind of educational, a little bit of my rant of like what I would like to see happen in this category. So if the Hendersons are watching this, know I love your product, know I love what you're doing, but I would love to see the federal government and the bourbon industry come together to perhaps protect the finished style of products. Because as it is now, anybody can do anything with these barrel finishes and get away with it. Whereas if it would have stopped with how like Angel's Envy does it and how they do it right, I don't think that we would ever be talking about this, especially if it got some kind of federal protection. That said, we do have Kyle Henderson in here. He says, what do you all think about the TTB, considering the changing of the definition of finishing? I love it. I do love that Kyle's in here. So there we have it, everybody. And now people A lot of people have brought up a lot of finishes that they thought were really, really good. Someone brought up the product in DC. It's escaping my mind at the moment, but they do the cigar blend, Murray's Hill. It'll come to me. But other people brought up Bardstown Bourbon Companies. You know what? I really was not a fan of the finishes with Bardstown Bourbon Company this year. We've got someone talking about the Sagamore Spirit. Again, not a fan there. I thought that was, I mean, it was okay. It was good, but it was not on this level. You know, what we have up here today is, to me, is like these are all very, very elite. Very elite. That's just saying. Magnus. Someone brought up Magnus. I did taste the Magnus this year. I did taste the Magnus releases this year, and I did not feel like they were warranted. Even me, like, doing like a review on them, I thought it was like a couple of them that I had tasted, I had lost a lot of the whiskey flavor. So that's one of the things with the barrel finishes. When you lose the whiskey flavor, you kind of lose meat. A lot of people like that, especially people who love sherry. But I'm not a fan of losing that of that whiskey. So, all right. So I want to now talk about the whiskeys that we have up here. Wild Willie asked Michter's Toasted Barrel. Look, I tasted Michter's Toasted Barrel. It was kind of like, it wasn't at this echelon. It was right below it for me, and it was not something that really excited me in terms of getting it over this hump. I mean, it was good, and I liked it, but again, I'm not putting it on this level. Benjamin says, Magnus is legit. Didn't say they weren't legit. I just said what I tasted this year did not meet what I thought was here on this table. Alan Bishop says, just finished a rye finished absinthe. By the way, Alan's got something on the table right here. Scott Green says, Barrel's killing it with their finishes. I agree that Barrel has done a very good job with their finishes. The ones that I had tasted this year did not meet that kind of, like, it didn't hit this table. So what you have here on the table are the ones that, to me, are really elite. I feel like you can still taste the base of the bourbon, the base of the product, and the barrel actually accentuates it or complements it and does not take away from the barrel flavor. So, all right. That's that is, I can now, let's see if we can go to, we'll go to camera 2 here, Bob. Let's go to camera 2 and just focus on some questions before we get into the tasting. High West Double Rye Syrah, made from Missouri, and Midwinter Night is tasty. Steve's brought up Midwinter Night. Midwinter Night is one of my favorites that I've ever had. Act 3 was so friggin' good. So friggin' good. Brad Mitchell says Alan Bishop is a genius. Love his passion and distilling knowledge. I agree. He is really, really cool. The Mark asks, did you try Woodinville Port Finish? Woodinville Port Finish was close to making this list. It was something that I tasted in Q2. If you go back and take a look at some of the videos, you'll find it. But I was very, very, very high on it. Alan Bishop says blend and balance is the key. Thank you for that. I do agree with you there. Tim Shaw says, have you tried Filibuster? As a matter of fact, I've had Filibuster, and I really like Filibuster. It's got a really nice walnut note in there that you don't find in a lot of whiskeys. I love that walnut note. And I think that is going to do it for the questions here. All right, so now I'm going to talk to you about what each one of these are. So we have Yellowstone. Now this is something that I just got in a couple days ago, and I've done a couple tastings with it. I have not done a public tasting or had written notes. So these were basically tastings that I had done on my own. and it is a Kentucky bourbon finished in Armaganac cask. And when I tasted this, the Armaganac and the bourbon, I will tell you, married up very nicely. It was really quite something. Now, you heard me talk a lot about Angel's Envy. I think Angel's Envy actually came in fourth last year with their sherry finish. I think Angel's Envy does a brilliant job with barrel finishing. And this, I think, is the best thing they put out this year, which is saying something because the Mizunara cask was friggin' amazing. But this is the tawny finish that is the Cellar's collection. Now, funny story about this. So these three right here, these three were all provided to me by the distillery. And Angel's Envy, when they send me samples, they sent me like a really tiny sample. And I did not realize it, but I didn't have any left. And so I'm like all panicking when I'm looking around trying to find a sample. And I called the distillery and asked them if they had any left. And I went down there. I rushed down there today to buy a bottle. So I actually bought this from the distillery. This is from their cellar collection. And by the way, they had a few left. So I was kind of surprised I was able to get this. But when I tasted this, it was like heaven to me. This I'm a big fan of port. So I'm a huge fan of tawny port. So Ruby Port's the younger one. Tawny Port is the older one. And the vintage ones where you see the years on them, that is basically the year they were bottled. And so I've spent a lot of time in Portugal and studied port quite a bit. So this to me is, if it is not, it's either the best Angel's Envy I've ever had, or it's in the top 2 or 3. So I would actually need to do some I probably need to go through the cask strengths, the entire cask strengths. And so this is the High Rye from Spirits of French Lick, straight bourbon finished in port cask. Now, I saw that Alan Bishop was in the chat, so if he would like to tell us what kind of port cask that was in there, I would appreciate that, because I do not know if they were ruby or tawny or vintage. That said, their mash bill is 55% corn, 35% rye, and 10% malt. They are really focusing on the grain. Their stuff is always spot on with how the grain can be quite tasty. And this one is, I think, is great. Now, one of the things that they have that presents a little brand confusion is they are in Indiana. So there's a lot of people who just see a bottle from them and see it's distilled in Indiana and just assume it's coming from the former Seagram's plant in MGP Ingredients, when in fact they distill their own stuff in French Lick. I've been there, and a little story for you. This was actually the first distillery that I took my son Oscar to. We went there on the grand opening, and so that distillery will always have a special place in my heart, because that is where my son first tapped on a barrel. He was very young, 2, 3. I think it was 3. Yeah, I think it was 3. We didn't let him drink anything. Still don't. That's illegal. Okay, so that's and this one here is really delicious. And you saw me. I believe you all have seen me. When I do that son of a bitch, I go like, there's sometimes I taste something and I go, oh, son of a bitch. When I first tasted Foregate Batch 6, which is the one that's finished in Cognac and Rum casks, I kind of lost it a little bit. It was really, really, really special. Now, these were all poured for me blind. The results are behind me. They are labeled A, B, C, and D. The results are behind me, and I've got a little bit of dry mouth now after all that yapping. I will not be spitting tonight. Tonight will be a no spit night. Class A. I will say that these are the best examples of what I would like to see in barrel finishes. Anytime I taste sugar, anytime I taste the barrel overpowering the whiskey, I'm turned off. You know, if I can't taste the whiskey, I don't want it. If I taste the material that the former barrel aged, I don't want it. And if I taste sugar, I seriously don't want it. So glacé is really smelling nice. A little chocolate, a little creme brulee. There's definitely some spice in here. This spice reminds me of like some kind of like some of the cinnamon notes that you get in some Four Roses. So what you think of like a nice pat of cinnamon butter on a piece of rye toast? Really, really quite delicious. Let's go to B. B smells a lot like an iron skillet left on too long with some butter just kind of getting all caked in there. So caramelized butter. Then on the palate, spice, French bread, maple syrup. Yeah, Cart says breakfast. This definitely does smell like breakfast to me. Now I'm going to come over here, answer any questions. Now I saw that I am live streaming at the same time as Jason, my friend, Mash and Drum. That was not intentional. Because I was running around trying to find a bottle today, I basically had to delay the tasting. You know, so Rare Bird, make sure you send my wishes to Jason tonight for sure. Jeff is saying I'm going to be all kinds of Phil Chilterd. Now you got to give me a little love, man. You got to give me some love. Get my liver knows how to work. I am a pro. Modern Thirst says honored to have 4 Gate on this list. We're proud of Batch 6. You should be proud of Batch 6. Batch 6 is really, really, really quite delicious. Now, when I am done with this, if you guys miss any of the commentary or anything, I will be doing a recap for both. You'll be doing a recap for both. Maybe I'm probably going to do a recap on Forbes, also fredminnick.com. Kyle Henderson says, so it's my PR team's fault. The answer to that is yes. All in good fun, though. I actually prefer buying my bottles. Alan C. says, cinnamon butter on rye toast. Great description. Thank you. I'm all about some cinnamon butter. I love me some cinnamon butter. Of course, that was in glass A. Let's get to C. Now, I will tell you that A and B Holy cow, they are night and day. They are so different. They are so different. A is kind of what I feel like. A is something that, you know, a whiskey head's going to be more excited about. I feel like B is going to be more approachable to most people. But in terms of this is not about me trying to pick of what's best for most people. This is about me picking what I like. So here we go to Glass C. Jeff comes in and says, "Much respect for your liver." Thank you. Hold on, I got it. Oh, there we are. Yeah, okay. I had to push it back in. It got out of joint. Now, this is interesting. This one I'm getting like a cotton candy machine, like a cotton candy stand, like in the fairgrounds. There's some funk up in here. Woo-wee! Funk. Funky Cole Medina. Some funk. And then you get it on the palate. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, it's very like sweet, very caramel laden. No spices there, no incredible nuance on the sweetness. It's just sweet, but not like a chemical sweet. Go to Glass D. Actually, before I go to Glass D, I'm seeing some stuff in the chat here about my liver. You know, bringing up my wife having some herb skills, taking my wife's advice. Listen, I don't always take my wife's advice. She might be watching right now, but she'll tell you that I often don't. But yeah, the liver is so strong. Benjamin Raye says, I am so intrigued by your tasting notes. We definitely need to do a tasting camp soon. Good news on that. I have something in the works for Taste Camp. Cannot wait to tell you. Actually, I got to get official first and all that stuff, and then I'll tell you. But good stuff. Yeah, that camera. So it reminds me, after this, we'll do a live stream in the members only community. And if you are not a member, what you can do on your desktop, go to let's see, like there's a subscribe button on the desktop, and next to it is the join button. Click on the join button, and I'm going to show you what I think might have been the worst barrel finish of the entire year. Just was blah. So we'll talk about. So here we're talking about what's the best in the barrel finishes. In the members only live stream, we're going to talk about what the worst were in barrel finishes. So, Glass D. Ooh. Man, these are all rangy, man. These are all so different. I have to tell you, D is D just doesn't even taste like it has a finish. It just tastes like bourbon, you know. It's got like and I don't know if that's a good thing. You know, here we are talking about like the barrel finish, you know, products, and you want to say that you should be tasting a little bit of the finish, but not all of it. Now, this could be the Armaganac finish, and the Armaganac and bourbon share just some pretty similar notes on the sweet side. So, you know, D may just be the barrel finish may just be a little masked, but it's definitely coming in. It's coming in earthy. It's coming in fruity. And spicy with a hint of caramel. I almost want to say it's also, there's one other note that I got in there. I'm trying to think of what it was. I had this when I was in Maine. I was in Maine last. It was a homemade moon pie. So good. Okay. Yeah, I'm not getting, I'm just not getting a ton of the finish. I really like it, but what in the other three glasses, what I've gotten, I've definitely gotten the base, and then I've gotten the other layer of something else that I can't quite put my finger on it. If I wanted to really guess, I probably could, but I'm going to say that D is probably just going to get edged out here. Yep, D is going to go in fourth. But again, D, you made the table, and in my opinion, like, this was not an easy table to make. There have been a lot of barrel finishes put out this year. There's been a lot of things that people are trying to do differently. A lot of it bad. Actually, I would tell you that the amount of bad experimentation that's happening right now in whiskey is just off the charts. It's off the charts. Like, stop doing bad ideas. Like, there's ways to do it in a small level, but don't release it. You know, do something else with that whiskey. You don't have to release every single friggin' experiment. So, and that's why I go with like, with like what Angel's Envy's doing. Like, I mean, they're doing a really good job of focusing on, their DNA, which is finishing, and they're good at it. So, look, I'm going back to A, and A, like, I got like this kind of like pancake. I mean, there's like this like kind of like a pancake kind of note that I'm falling. The more I taste A, the more I fall in love with it. Go back to B. I'm pretty sure A is going to be in my finals. There's just so much to it beyond this like lighter notes that some of these are presenting. Oh man, damn, B's so fucking good. So I think C and A need to have a face-off in that quick tasting. B just kind of gave me the wiggles a little bit. Let me try and catch up on some questions. So there's a guess here that A from Brian Toner is French Lick. Danny's Candies on YouTube says the best port finish bourbon I've ever had was the 1792. Wish we'd be smoother like that. Yeah, you know, the 1792 that came out in 2013 by Truman Cox. Actually, no, that was the Abraham Bowman. The Bowman that came out in 2013, the port finish, which 1792 and Bowman owned by the same people. I actually think that those were special. Those were really special, and that also a little bit more special because, you know, Truman is no longer with us. Jeff, what about Woodinville Triple Barrel Ardbeg finish? Look, man, I'm not like I've seen a lot of like the Isla finishes come in. You're not going to see me getting in line for them. I just think that Isla should be Isla, and bourbon should find things that complement bourbon a little bit more than, you know. Kurt says, "You sure it's moon pie? You sure it wasn't lobster pie?" I mean, maybe. Jeff Hodge is more on the Woodinville port cask. Yes, it is good. Yes, it is. Benjamin Ray is guessing D is Yellowstone. We'll find out. We will find out. I always liked John J. Bowman port finished. Bought those many years ago, says Steve P. And Modern Thirst says, corn and peat do not mix. We tried. By God, I will tell you that I agree with that. I do not think there should be Isla barrels touching bourbon. We're jumping the shark, folks. Okay, so A versus C. Okay, so A, I can definitely smell the origins of what this was. I can smell the DNA. I can smell the grains. I can smell them being formed as breads coming out of the oven. I can smell the spiciness to it. Whereas in C, I can smell like a cadre of vanilla and caramel. And it's like almost like I'm almost in a like a French bakery, and they're making icing and cakes. So it's basically the two noses. You know when you smell these two noses that whatever they are very different. They are very different. It's not to say one's better than the other just based on the nose, but you can see that we have a completely different approach on the aromatic property. Something came up in C I did not pick before. There was an oak astringency. So that bitterness, is a little daunting in this flight, especially after tasting B. I'm going to go ahead and call it. I'm going to go ahead and put A in the top two. C is going to be in third. C is very good, but when you start getting nitty-gritty, when you start really picking something apart, and that's what you have to do when you are doing a taste-off, there was an oak astringency note there that just did not jam with me. And so now we're looking at A versus B for the best barrel finish of 2020. Get some fresh pours in there. Oh, listen up there, Rare Bird. It's all good. I am trying to please tell Jason that I apologize for coming in at the same time. Not my intention by any means. So, let's talk about what we have so far here between A and B. And I think my palate has definitely picked up a lot of different, more stuff. A, chocolate, caramel, pancake mix, cinnamon, rye toast, cinnamon butter on rye toast. B, caramelized butter, like an iron skillet. Spice, French bread, maple syrup, underscore, brilliant, or underlined, brilliant. And I'm gonna say this, that we're basically looking at breakfast in 2 bottles. You know, so one, you got breakfast that might be a little bit more country, and A, and you're gonna get some fresh eggs, you got some hash browns, and you got a skillet full of a skillet full of muffins, got some butter ready to go. And in B, you got the French toast and the maple syrup, and you got the fancy butters and all that sort of thing, and the jams. And so it's basically, you know, which way do you want to go with your breakfast? We're looking at 2 breakfast whiskeys here. They both smell beautiful. So way just kind of warms up on the tongue. It just follows back. It's really, that cinnamon nature is really reminiscent of a lot of how Four Roses hits the back of my palate. And it's just kind of dripping down the jawline. And it's intense. It's intense. Full of flavor. Mm. Ordinarily, I wouldn't do this, but I'm going to have to add water. This is really close for me. B is as impactful and powerful on my palate. But I mean, they both do very different things on my palate, and their finishes are in a dead heat. So the only way that I can do this, I think, fairly is to add water equally and try and do, you know, a tiebreaker that way. Let me make sure I have even amounts here. Just a touch more of the B. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go grab some water. All right. Now, when I am reviewing whiskeys, I hardly ever add water. Why? Because I believe in reviewing the whiskeys as they are sent to me. But sometimes when you're doing things like neck and neck and next to each other, you have to add water, and I'm getting a little bit more open to that. And wow, with just a drop of water, there's just the breakfast just turned into a whole thing of pancakes and syrup, a little bit of bacon just kind of grilling in the back, a little smoke off of bacon. I mean, it's a different whiskey. Chocolate pancakes. However, with water, we do see a drop in the finish. The finish is no longer as powerful and pungent as it was. So while there was a kind of like this new kind of fresh like approach and note, we see an enormous drop in the finish. Like the finish just went down a cliff. Glass B. Also very interesting, that maple syrup note that was on there before is more is larger. It's bigger. And the finish definitely holds up, might even gotten better. So a drop of water with B, I think it outtasted A. While they were very close pre-water. B is going to be your winner. Ugh. So how about it, everybody, for Glass A? I mean B. Glass B. B. I caught it. So now let's get to some questions before we do the big reveal. Kyle Henderson, Fred, where do you get your water from? Well, Kyle, I have a creek out back. The hogs run off into it, so I get my water from there and then do osmosis on it. No, I'm just kidding. It's tap water. I would like to have some good water. Simon, notice Alan Iverson just poked his head in and said, water? Are you talking about water? I mean, really, water? Everything else to discuss in your whiskey blog, we're adding water? Simon, you, my friend, just got the best sarcastic comment of the night. Congratulations. I will send you a box of nothing and wrapped in nothing, sent by no one. So I hope you enjoy. Let's see if we have any other questions. Kyle says I should start a whiskey brand. I'd fit right in. That's funny. Nick Wayne says, what's the water do to the bourbon? By the way, Nick, everybody, if you don't know who Nick is, Nick has been on my podcast before. He is a singer-songwriter in Nashville. Badass. Go make sure you follow him on Instagram. Very cool dude. And I think you're about to get married, Nick. Like soon, like April, if I'm not mistaken. So what does water do? Water basically just lowers out the... It lowers the proof. I mean, people will say it opens it up. It does. They'll say a lot of things, but really when it comes down to from a scientific perspective, it just lowers the proof. That's it. Mark asks, have I had the Rolling Fork rum? I have not had that one, and I know that a lot of people have asked me to taste it, and it has not made it to the taste buds yet. Brian Mack asks, any advice on a bourbon or rye that would be good for a Scotch drinker? Yes. Typically, ryes will appeal more. So, first of all, I think it's also very important to define the Scotch drinker. So, Scotch drinkers tend to be, someone will say they're a Scotch drinker, but then you talk to them and they're a Johnny Walker drinker, or they're a Highlands only drinker. So I think I think it's you got to define that a little bit more for me. Kurt asks, have you ever added water to a final tasting? As a matter of fact, I have. Definitely in competition, I have. In my own, have I done that? Yeah, I have. Benjamin Eves asked, thoughts on Isla finishing for rye. Hate it. Look, I know a lot of people are using Isla barrels right now for finishing. Not a fan. I don't want to taste Isla in my bourbon. I just don't want to taste the oyster shell, overly smokiness. I don't want to taste it. I just don't. I don't want that in the bourbon. I don't want that in the rye. What were the proofs of A and B? Well, Mark, as a matter of fact, I am not told the proofs. I just have A, B, C, D, and E. Because if I'm told the proofs, it might bias me with how I taste. So this is a blind tasting. The person who poured it for me just, writes it down on there and puts it in a notebook behind me. And there, it's in the back. Single Barrel Snob says, you asked me what my favorite single barrel is, so what's yours? My favorite single barrel of, barrel picks, I'm going to have to say Russell's Reserve. I have never had a bad Russell's Reserve barrel pick. And the greatest Russell's Reserve barrel pick I have ever had was from Lincoln Road Package Store in Mississippi. Just absolutely fantastic. Brad Jackson, any thoughts on reviews for forthcoming Old Carter American Rye, Kentucky Straight Batch 1, or single barrels from last year? Here's the truth about what I do, Brad. So I am a critic, but I also actively go out and buy stuff. And I am like every other consumer, and I see a product on the shelf that I know exactly where it came from. I know exactly what it is. And I see it priced at a certain way, and I'm like, ain't no fucking way I'm buying that. And that is the situation there with some of those. And I'm in a I have not requested samples for Old Carter or anything like that, but if that is something that you would like to see, if you would like to see Old Carter review, I will go out of my way to try and find that. But you all comment on in the comment section here if you all would like to see an Old Carter segment. Especially members, let me know if you'd like to see an Old Carter segment for sure. So, who wants to see the results? I feel like I'm over here answering all these questions, but Nick Wayne says, "Who's your favorite person to drink bourbon with?" Well, there is only one person I love to drink bourbon with, more than the moon, and that's my wife. I do love drinking bourbon with my wife. Second to that, Nick, we've only drank bourbon together once, but I have a feeling that if you and I drank bourbon again, it'd be a good time. I definitely believe that. All right, let's see. Bourbon Lens, what are your current front runners for Whiskey of the Year by type, if you don't want to reveal brands? Okay, I'll do that. I'm telling you, this year's William LaRue Weller was so good, and this year's Sazerac 18-year-old, so good. But I don't think you should ever rule out what will be my best everyday bourbon. You know, if Rare Breed wins best everyday bourbon, then I think Rare Breed for my palate always has a shot at winning, because it hits all the right spots and it stands out at the right proof point. And also, let's see, what's another one? I think the Westland Gariana was so good, and I really enjoyed I really enjoyed it, and it's a really good single malt. And everyone's kind of gone all batshit crazy over Rua, and I really liked Rua a lot. But I've had a couple bottles since. I mean, I've been drinking a lot of Rua. It's true, but I don't know if the next one will be this one here. What did Jonathan Finkel ask? Okay, I'm sorry. I have to say, Jonathan Finkel, does anyone ever brought up Ray Finkel with you? Is it Finkel or Einhorn? Finkel, Einhorn, Finkel, Einhorn. I mean, I'm so sorry, but I was such a huge Ace Ventura fan. Don't take that the wrong way. But I did not like Rare Breed Rye. In all my tastings with it, it did not really, do it for me. So, let's see. Bourbon Lens, I thought single malts were going to explode in 2020, but I think COVID, Here's the thing about single malts. Single malts and rum are two things, in American brandy, are three things that everyone is always talking about being the next thing that's going to make it, right? And I just think people really focus too much on what's next, and I try not to do that, and I've had editors try to get me down that road, but when you focus on what's next, you're not focusing on what's here. And you kind of have to follow the patterns of what people are buying. I mean, if you want to talk about what's next, fucking White Claw shit. That's what's next, to be honest with you. Jason Day says, in regards to Mr. Finkel there, probably his first time hearing that, I can hear his sarcastic nature. Just like I've never heard, "Are you the golfer?" Well, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have brought it up. All right, folks. Here we are. It's time. And I regret that I brought up White Claw on such an important evening, because I will say there was not a loser in this bunch. Every single one of these are fantastic, and every single one of them will be, get like their own logo from me that they were a contender. And by the way, these brands do not pay to be here or anything like that. I do my best to buy the brands. Like I bought this one. The other three were brought to me. But I do. This is just me tasting. This is my preference. This is me tasting, doing what I like. I also try to show you my process, and it's my third year doing it. And I hope that the final run, I'm able to do some really cool stuff. I'm able to. Basically, I'm trying to get a production company to come in and do the live stream, so you can see what I'm tasting as I'm doing the tasting notes and everything. And I don't have to do all the buttons, and I won't be talking to you and all that. But I think it would be a lot of fun. So let's get to it. This is the big reveal.